Alright guys, Abel here back with another video, and this time I want to talk about personal development, or at least something related to personal development. After all, I named this whole brand and my podcast as well Sustainable Self-Development, not Sustainable Fitness or Sustainable Bodybuilding or anything like that. I mean, yes, fitness is one of my main passions and is a big focus of this YouTube channel and my podcast, but it's not the sole focus. So let's talk about personal development. And within that, let's talk about reading personal development books and why I believe that if you are aspiring to change your future or live the best life you can or try to become the best version of yourself, you should be reading personal development books. And at first it sounds duh. I mean, why wouldn't you read personal development books? But actually, I've taken a pretty substantial break from reading these types of books not long ago, and the main reason for that was that I just became pretty disappointed with what I've read in a lot of these books. I mean, I've certainly had the pleasure of reading a couple of books over the recent years which have been really profoundly impactful for me and really impacted my overall life philosophy and just how I'm looking at my day-to-day existence. But honestly, a lot of them did not fall into that category. A lot of them were just rehashing cliches over and over again and were filled with a ton of useless anecdotes and stories which were honestly just there to kill some time and allow the author to fill up the book with 250 pages rather than just 50, which honestly would have been more than enough to get everything across in that book that the author wanted to get across. So I've had a lot of negative experience lately reading these types of books, and still I had to come to the conclusion that there is a lot of value in reading these books. And even if you had some negative experiences, you should just look for better books, and you should also reread the books that have been good and have been beneficial for you. To illustrate why I believe this to be the case, let me tell you a short personal story, and hopefully that will be somewhat illustrative. So when I was 17 or 18 years old, I went to this conference which was advertised as this stock trading educational conference, but in reality it was this motivational personal development type seminar. And to this day, I don't really remember what exactly happened in that seminar, but by the time I finished with it, I came out so incredibly inspired. I mean, honestly, I felt like I was walking 3 feet above the ground. I was just incredibly lifted up, motivated, and I felt like I had an epiphany that basically I've been just living a half life up until now, and there are just so many things that I could do with my life and with my future. There are so many areas in which I could improve, and there are so many areas of my overall being that I just neglected up until this point, and I could cultivate new relationships, and I could work on daily habits, and I could make myself a more optimistic, happier person. And I just came out of that seminar thinking that my life is never going to be the same. And what happened after that, honestly, was truly devastating, because for 1 or 2 weeks, this fired up feeling still lasted. But after a couple of months, I had to realize that there was just nothing from that enthusiastic guy that came out of that seminar. And I just went back to living in my old ways, basically. And so later on, I started thinking about what actually happened and why was it that I could not really take action and could not really do anything with that enthusiasm that I had. And part of it is, of course, the inherently transient nature of enthusiasm and motivation. But another part of it is that when you're getting really, really fired up about something, you're sort of starting to live in two parallel realities. And this is going to sound really woo-woo, but it's actually pretty simple. When you're getting really motivated by something and you get inspired, you start thinking about what could be, how your future could look like. And at the same time, you're living in your regular day-to-day reality where basically everything around you, your friends, your family members, your environment, your workplace or your school or whatever, is reminding you of the fact that you're still the same guy. You're still Joe Sixpack. You're still the same person that you were 2 days ago. And the thing is that the whole concept of what you could do with your future and the whole idea that your destiny is in your hands and that the future is so open and you can do anything. And then the whole idea that you're still just the same regular guy that you were yesterday, or sort of competing with one another, if you will. And the thing about that is both of them are correct. I mean, yes, you are the same guy that you were 2 days ago and nothing inherently changed about you. And yes, it's also true that you can do almost anything and you could certainly do a lot more things with your life than what you're doing currently. But which one of your realities you're actually going to live out sort of depends on which one is getting reinforced more frequently. And certainly this reality where you're just the same guy as you were yesterday is getting reinforced all the time. I mean, everything around you is reminding you of that. You wake up in the morning, you still see the same room, you go to work, you are surrounded by the same colleagues, and you still have your same friends, and everything else is screaming into your face that, dude, you can dream, but what makes you think that anything has changed? I mean, certainly there can be some exceptions to this if you find a mentor, which I don't know if that actually happens or this is something that only happens in movies and in books, and someone adopts you for a couple of months and you're living with a person and that person is guiding you through every moment of every day, then yes, there could be more of your regular daily stuff that are reminding you of the new you that you want to be. But in most cases, in your day-to-day life, you're just getting reminded of the fact that nothing has changed about you and you're still the same person. And so I think for this exact reason, reading something, for example, before bed, reading something inspirational, and then when you wake up, just reading for 15 minutes and reading something inspirational again, that is basically just enough to remind you for just those 15 minutes every day of who you actually want to be. And just to remind you of, this is the direction I want to go into, and this is the path that I want my life to take from now on. And this is kind of handy because you might be really motivated and inspired and you might hear or read something that is really positive and makes you optimistic about the future. But then the ugly reality of your day-to-days is kind of giving you a reality check. And it's easy to get discouraged and just forget about who you actually want to be and the changes that you want to make in your everydays. I mean, yeah, you may have seen a video from Gary Vee or some influencer like him about hustling and starting a side business that you always wanted to start, and you might be really fired up about that. But then, on a Tuesday afternoon when you came home from work and you're sitting on the couch, kind of tired, you just had a huge meal, it's really, really hard to actually remember who you actually want to be and what that new path is that you want your life to take. And then in that moment, if you can just remember that, just this morning I read in Stephen Pressfield's War of Art this thing about resistance and how this force in the world is trying to stop us from doing our best work, that can be enough to basically get you moving. And the same applies if you're an obese person and you're dreaming about having a great six-pack, or maybe you're really socially awkward and you want to make more friends or you want to get laid more. The point is that by reading every day and having these frequent reminders of who you actually want to be, that can make the difference between fading into the ugly reality of your day-to-day life and actually taking action and putting that motivation and that enthusiasm into some good use. And so I think that books are one of those few things that can actually help us to not just chase ourselves in circles and get fired up for a few days sometimes when we see some video that motivates us, and then a few days later get back into our normal ways and then get a bit devastated because we didn't capitalize on our motivation. And certainly the world around us doesn't help us in that too much. I mean, our friends and family members, they have their own problems. I mean, they are not going to remind us day to day what we could do or what we should do. And that's our responsibility to find tools and things that can help us remember what our goals are, what our values are, and just what we could do with our lives. And I think that these books are one of those few things. So I think it is very smart to make use of them and to read them every day, frequently, at least once a day, but preferably twice. I think a simple routine like reading them before bed and then upon waking up is great. And I have neglected them in my recent past, but I have been reading these books for a couple of years before that. And now that I have neglected them, I definitely notice the negative implications of not reading them. Don't give up on these books. If you have read some shitty ones, then try to find some better ones. Goodreads, the site that you probably know, is a pretty good one to give you recommendations for books that could be good based on your interests. And I would also recommend that if you actually found a book that you found beneficial and it impacted you positively, don't just read it once. I mean, read it again after some time. I would almost analogize it to reading the Bible. I mean, I don't read the Bible myself, but people that are religious and do read the Bible, they don't just read it once and don't just read as they are finding out how the storylines in the Bible unfold. They are reading the same parts again and again because they are getting out something from those lines and they want to reinforce those messages again and again. So yeah, the books that you actually did like, read them again, because the things that were impactful for you when you read them first, they probably will be impactful for you again. So yeah, that was my short rant on why personal development books are beneficial, even though there are admittedly a lot of shitty ones. but still overall the experience is going to make us better humans, I believe. So hopefully this video was insightful and informative in some ways at least. Like the video if you liked it, or dislike it if you disliked it. Let me know what you thought in the comment section, and subscribe to the channel to support this channel. And with that, see you next time.